What is going on, Bucs fans and CFP fans? Evan Wanish here, back at you with yet another video talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And today we're going to be going over the players to watch wild card edition. Yes, wild card edition, because it is for the Buccaneers wild card matchup Sunday night against the Washington Commanders. The Bucs are the 3 seed taking on the 6-seeded Commanders. Bucs finished the season 10-7. Commanders finished the season with 12 wins, 12-5, but one of their 5 losses was to the Buccaneers in week 1. So we will see what happens in this one. But I'm not alone today. Joining me is my CFP co-host, Mr. Rhett Matthew. Rhett, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. I'm amped up for this one. I expect a good game. This is what the playoffs are all about. High anxiety, high pressure situation. Win or go home for the Buccaneers this Sunday. So it should be a great game. 2 very different teams from when they last met in week 1. And for Tampa Bay, quite literally right back where they began. Wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest with you. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think, a pretty fun matchup, right? There's a lot of storylines. When we talk about storylines, you look at who's on the Washington defense, right? And you look at who they've acquired. It's Marshon Lattimore, right? And Marshon Lattimore has battled some injuries, right, with New Orleans and with Washington. But that's why our first player to watch is going to be Mike Evans. And it's mostly because of that matchup, right? It's a legendary matchup. We all know the stories, right? We're not going to rehash it. You've heard it over and over. You've seen them. I mean, you've literally seen them. And there's been fireworks in these matchups, good or bad, right, for the Buccaneers. There's been a few times where Mike Evans gotten the better of Marshon Lattimore. There's been a few times where Lattimore's got the better of Evans. But it's always a physical matchup. And now, yes, it is a different team from Marshon Lattimore, but it's still the same matchup here. I think Mike Evans, the Bucs are going to try and get him involved, but I think the Commanders are going to try and limit the damage that Mike Evans can have. Had 2 touchdowns the last time these 2 teams played, and I think the Bucs are going to try and get him the football early and often, maybe get him in rhythm a little bit. I'm not sure how the Commanders are going to defend him, whether it's going to be Lattimore playing on him exclusively, this or that, but we will see. What do you think Mike Evans' impact on Sunday night's game could be?
Without question, this is, probably the biggest matchup people have circled for the Buccaneers offense versus Washington defense. One of the things I also take into account here is the experience of Dan Quinn. Defensive-minded head coach. He's working with veteran pieces on that defense. He has game planned for a Mike Evans before. They used to play him twice a year when he was the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. So he knows just what to do to try and limit big number 13. I think it's going to be a big physical matchup, but Mike Evans, just like any game, he's always got that potential impact to just take over. He could have a monster day. He usually, in his career, is very productive against Washington. So that could be the case. It could be a frustrating day if he only gets, 4 or 5 targets because Lattimore's got a blanket on him. So we'll have to see how it plays out, but it's a classic rivalry. It's a classic battle. You love when you see it, right?
It definitely is. We thought it was over, right? We thought oh, well, Marshon Lattimore got traded. That's it. But no, we at least got one more left in us. But let's move on now. And that's obviously passing the football, right, through the air. But I want to talk about the ground. I'm not going to talk about anybody specifically. I'm just going to talk about the Bucs run game. The Bucs 3 running backs, Bucky Irving, Rachaad White, Sean Tucker. The Washington run defense is bad. I mean, simply put, it is bad. It is the 30th ranked rush defense in the NFL. The Buccaneers, I think, need to take advantage of this. It doesn't matter who it is, right? I don't care who it is. Seems like, they wanted it to be Bucky Irving. That's perfectly fine, but they got to be able to find a way to run the football with whoever it may be on Sunday night.
Yeah, and we talked about it on the game preview show. This is a weaker run defense. I think Liam Cohen, as an offensive coordinator, can't get away from the run. In the games that they've lost against Dallas, they got away from the run in that first half. That game against New Orleans, where they almost lost because of a slow start on offense, they got away from the run in the first half of that game. I'm not sure why, when the numbers favor them, they get away from the run, but that can't happen this week. I definitely think everything on offense is going to base itself on how effective this run game is, because it could be one of those things where at the end of the first half, you've got 120 yards rushing. You dictate the pace of the game by that point. So I think the run game is probably the most important X factor this week for the Buccaneers on offense, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think they need to play to their strengths and the opponent's weaknesses. So it sort of matches up well for them. And one of the big reasons why, if you guys watched the previous show, I flipped my prediction, right? Because Washington's run defense was that bad. I was like, I think this really favors Tampa. So we'll see what happens there. But flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, we are going to be talking about another unit. The Bucs pass rushers, but not for a reason you may think, not necessarily rushing the quarterback, keeping Jaden Daniels contained inside the pocket, though. I think it's going to be important for the Bucs edge defenders, Yaya Diaby, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Anthony Nelson, Chris Braswell, Shaq Barrett. I think it's going to be important for these guys to set the edge and not let Jaden Daniels be able to escape to the outside and get 10, 11, 12 yards. If that happens, I think it could be a long day for the Bucs defense. They're going to be on the field a whole awful lot. They're going to get tired and they're going to get wore down. So I think the Bucs edge defenders, along with a couple other things, right? It's not just all put on them, but I think the Bucs edge defenders, yes, they need to rush the quarterback, right? Make that rookie quarterback uncomfortable, but I think they also need to do a good job of keeping him right in that pocket.
Yeah, if they can't pressure him in the pocket and they also can't slow him down, basically, if the Buccaneers defense doesn't have an answer for Jaden Daniels and his legs by the end of that first half, they're just going to continue to do it. And this is a Buccaneers defense that at times this season has really found themselves in a bend but don't break situation. So this Washington offense, they are high scoring enough. They are good enough at moving the football that I do feel like this is a bend but don't break week for that Buccaneers defense. But yeah, those edge rushers, another huge week, counting on your big athletic guys to not only try and disrupt the quarterback as a pass rusher, but just slow him down as a runner. Set the edge, like you said, and don't let him get away from you.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too much into this one because we did just talk about James Daniels running the ball, but another reason why we're going to have guy like Levante David on this list because the middle linebacker is also a type of guy who can help slow that down, can help stop that way, right? When you're the guy that's going to have eyes on Jaden Daniels at all times, you're going to have to find ways to not let him really hurt you with his legs. So I think Levante David's going to have a big night on Sunday night. The Bucs defense wants to have some success here.
Yeah, I agree. Tackling has been a big issue for this defensive unit, and that's going to play a factor. Levante David leading the way. The ageless wonder, we always call him. He has been just as good this season. Certain parts of his game have slowed down, but tackling, they got to be on their P's and Q's this week because if you miss a tackle on Jaden Daniels or Terry McLaurin, I mean, even Zach Ertz, I know he's a big, slow tight end, but the Bucs have had trouble covering the middle of the field. If you miss a tackle on those guys, they could pick up another 5, 10, 15 yards and keep your defense on the field that much longer.
Yeah, I think tackling is a very big key. It wasn't great in the first half against New Orleans, resulted in a couple first downs for the Saints. So that's something that I think the Bucs are going to want to limit for sure and clean up. Last thing we are going to mention here, and it's not something we've mentioned often. It's not something we really talk about often, but we're going to mention special teams. I know we mentioned a little bit on the game preview show, but obviously the Bucs had one of their first real special teams blunders, despite having three different punters and not really being able to find an answer at punter. There wasn't really a blunder like the one we saw on Sunday just yet, and it happened when Jack Browning fumbles a snap, picks it up cleanly, was able to pick it up, and then tries to punt it, kicks it off his foot, ends up being like a 14-yard punt. That's something that can't happen this week, and I think that's the type of mistake that ends up getting you eliminated. I think that's the type of mistake that you just simply cannot afford when the playoffs come around. I mean, it's bad enough in the regular season, but when it's the playoffs, that's something that you just probably won't be able to overcome against a lot of these good teams. So the special teams are going to have to be on their P's and Q's in this one.
Yeah, we've mentioned a ton Washington, their offense, and their ability to move the football effectively and score points this season. They're one of the better teams in the league at doing so. You can't gift them great field position. There were multiple times against New Orleans where the Buccaneers gifted them awesome field position, some of the best territory they had been in all day. Luckily, their defense stepped up when it did and made a couple of crucial stops, but the Saints are not Washington. The Saints did not win 12 games this year, and their offense is not top 5 with an experienced head coach like Dan Quinn. So with that being said, that's going to be huge this week.
Yeah, I think that's key to, really not beat yourself, right? And a lot of times special teams mistakes are beating yourself. So I think that's going to be a pretty big key in this one. But let us know who the players you are going to be keeping an eye on. We are very curious to hear. Is it a position group? I know we had a couple of position groups in there. Is it a specific player? Why? We want to hear the little reasoning why, and you're keeping an eye on them too. Do you agree with our list, or do you have your own list? So always curious to hear what you guys think. But thank you all for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And go Bucs.